Well, I've got this carburetor all cleaned up here. I didn't have a very easy time of it. Took quite a bit of scrubbing and cleaning and a couple of cans of carburetor cleaner and some time by ultrasonic cleaner. But one thing I wanted to show you here is some of these carburetors right here will have a check ball. Not all of them will. This one here does happen to have a little tiny check ball that drops into there. And then there's this little spring retainer which I don't seem to have much luck getting in there very easily. I'll try and do it on camera here, but I'm not going to bore you if I struggle with it. I'm not going to spend 10 minutes trying to do it. But you got to get it. There's not like a really good notch or anything in there that goes into. There, I got it. And then that'll retain that in there, and then the gasket goes over there, and there'll be kind of a smaller hole there that goes over that. So I just thought I'd show this to you, and then just about ready to put it together, and I'll start the video at that point. I'll vacuum off this little green mat here and make sure it's a little bit cleaner, and we'll start putting this thing back together. Alright, I've got the main body back here. One of the first things I want to do is put the squirter nozzle in. I didn't show it being taken out, but I've got a little gasket that goes on the bottom here. And usually for most of these small screws, I use a little bit of this lubriplate assembly grease. Don't have to slobber it on, just a little tiny bit, especially on these older carburetors that are 60 years old like this one is. I've found that it's a little bit easier on the threads. Make sure that's good and tight. You don't want it coming loose. Okay, I'll flip it over and we'll put the base plate on. That way I won't have to worry about that little retainer possibly falling out. Make sure you get the gasket turned around the right way. There we go. And same thing with the screws that hold that on. A little bit of lubriplate. Just a little dab on each one. That's all it really needs. Okay, now that this is on, then we won't have to worry about that little check ball possibly falling out and a little retainer falling out, which you'll never find either one again if they ever did. Also, I already did it on these, but I like to take a little Arkansas stone like this and just slightly go over any of the surfaces. Just what it'll do is it'll show up any nicks or high spots pretty quickly, and then I'll take that down. So any of the mounting surfaces, like between the throttle body and the main body and any other spot like that, I try to do that. And then next up we've got the little idle mixture screw. It screws in right there. Of course, you always want to remember not to bottom that out tight. And as I was putting this throttle body on, I was looking at the hole on the other side. It looked to me like somebody did bottom it out and actually had it kind of flared out a little bit towards the inside. But There's not much I can do about that now. So hopefully we can make it work good enough for the guy. Bring it into where it just touches. Okay, right there. And I was about 3 turns out from bottoming when I took this off. I'm going to take it 2 turns out. Yeah, I'll make it 2.5. That's a good starting point anyways. So I've got that on there. And I think what I ought to do, I'll shut the camera off. I'm going to polish this here up a little bit better for this linkage that goes on there. I kind of forgot to do that, and it's pretty rusty looking, so let me shut the camera off and I'll polish that up some. Okay, so I got that polished up a little bit, and I've also put a small amount of lubriplate on it. I kind of hesitate to do that because on anything outside like this, because it tends to attract dirt, but this thing was so rough and so it had been so pitted and rusty, I thought it wouldn't be a bad idea to give it a little bit extra protection. Didn't get a new one of these hairpins, but I did get a new one of these smaller clips. Alright, it only took me about a minute to get that on there, but you can see how that goes. That's how you want to bend that little clip there. Get in the camera there. That's how you want to bend that. That way there's no possibility of there being any interference as the throttle moves. If you take one of these legs and bend it around this way on the other direction, then as this goes through its travel, it's going to hit that and possibly either pop it out or break it or cause your throttle to jam. So you bend it back around that way and you're just fine. Now the next step here I'm going to show you is getting this little spring and extension back on for the diaphragm for the accelerator pump. And this spring's a little bit stiff, and I always try to aim it the way I'm aiming it. If it tries to shoot across the room, it's going to bounce off the table and bounce back at me because it'll go far. But basically you push this down until it's past that little ledge there, and then you drop the set screw in, and there it is. That's what retains that. I've been debating, I don't know, I don't think it'll be a good idea to put any of that lubriplate on there. But this drops right down in there like that. And then of course, that's what actuates your accelerator pump right there. I notice that's way far off. There's a lot of throttle opening before it hits that, and that's the way the other one was as well. I don't know if I'll have to maybe bend this arm a little bit. I know this was totally locked in, and the guy that I got this carburetor from that wanted me to rebuild it drove this thing home. So I have to wonder if he didn't maybe bend that linkage arm there. I'm gonna have to look into bending that back or doing something. But if you've got that much throttle movement, then you've got a heck of a bug. So the next step's gonna be putting this little metering block back together. I had a hard time getting that thing clean too. I just kept getting more and more dirt out of it. I think I finally got it all. But I got the jet cleaned up pretty well. At least the most important part of it is. And it happens to be a Holley 66 jet. So we'll screw that in there. Just a tiny bit of lubriplate. Don't want to get so much to where it ends up clogging stuff up. Okay, and then we've got our two little wells there, and don't forget this one here takes the big check ball. I think I should have some of them in this kit. Yeah, there's one rolling around right there. That's a small one. There's the big one. So that just drops right down in there like that, and then you get the plug. There's one plug. There's the other one. Looks like they're the same. Just a dab of lubriplate on that as well. Screw her in. Now remember, on the other one we've got this weight, but the check ball goes first. So I've got a new check ball in here somewhere for it. So that'll drop down in, and then the weight goes right after it, and then the plug. Okay, and that's it for the assembly for this. So we've got this in here, and then we need the spring. It goes in there just like that. And let me dig the bolts out of here, and the screws. Remember, there's two short ones and two long ones. And we'll lubriplate each one of these. Definitely these, they came out kind of hard. I didn't like the way they felt when they came out. Okay, now it's a bit of a juggling act here to keep this spring in here and get this spun around the right way. And this drops down on. You gotta kind of tilt this a little bit. There's a lip there to get that started up underneath there. And once it's in there, you set it right down. The gasket tends to want to move around a little bit, so you might have to juggle things around to get the screw started. Of course, I've got a magnetic screwdriver that's pulling my screws out. Yeah, that one hole right there, I don't like the feel of it. It's definitely definitely tight. I noticed that when I pulled it out originally, it was pretty tight feeling. I don't know why this screwdriver is magnetic. It's not supposed to be a magnetic one, but I must have used it on something that gave it just a little bit of magnetism, just enough to be a pain to pull these screws out when I'm trying to line things up. Of course, you want to do like just about anything else like this. You want to go in a bit of a crisscross pattern. You don't want to just tighten one up, especially one on a corner, and then move to the center, because you'll probably snap one of these ears off. At the very least, you'll probably warp the thing. Oh, one slightly interesting aside, while I was cleaning this thing, I noticed that the bowl vent was completely plugged with, I don't know what insect does it to make some little, looks like little brown mud trails. But that float bowl, or the float vent goes from there out into there. It was plugged completely solid in here. I actually had to use some compressed air and stand back and blow on it pretty hard, and then a big wad of that stuff blew out of there. So I don't know how this thing was even running. The guy said it ran good. It ought to run really good now. But anyways, that's that thing back in there. Good to go. I guess the next step can be the power piston. That's the equivalent to a power valve if you had like a Holley 4-barrel. Let's see here, I got a gasket here, I got my cover. Should be 3 screws. Lubricate them. Okay. So you gotta make sure you align this gasket correctly. You've got a little vacuum port right there. So you get it, and then you get the power piston itself aligned correctly. And then the cover. Same thing with these, you bring the screws in till they touch, and then you work your way around. You know, tighten one up and then go to the next one and tighten it tight. You want to work them all around. That'll save you from breaking anything, and it just keeps things from warping. I just, out of habit, I tighten everything that I tighten that way. Don't even think about it. Okay, that's good and tight. And you can see how that works. And you've got a high vacuum like in an idle or light throttle. That power piston is pulled up. I can't really get a hold of it, but anyways, it's pulled up away from the little enrichment valve in there. There we go. And then if you hit the throttle, say you're on a hill and you get pretty deep into the throttle and your vacuum drops off, well, that drops down and that provides you with more fuel. That's, they call it like a power valve or the power enrichment, or there's probably 10 other different names for that too, but that's how that works anyways on this particular carburetor. Kind of similar to, somewhat similar principle of a power valve on a Holley 4-barrel or like on a Carter AFB or a Rochester Quadrajet with the metering rods, although the metering rods are a lot more precise because you can get different tapers and really tune that fatter fuel curve. Okay, so at this point I have to get the float taken care of. I'm going to shut the camera off and I'll get all the float parts out of here and I'll show you what to do with that. So I'll be back.